Hello. So this video is going to be it's either going to be a video series or it's going to be a collection of clips or something like that. The motivation behind this video is to show you what you can do to maintain a Chicago Schwinn, which is one of the most durable bikes ever manufactured in America. The last of them went out of production in the 80s, but they're prolific, they're cheap to maintain, and so my goal is to go through and show you like the basic things that you can do to keep one running, and how to adjust it and make sure it's all working well. I'm going to cover a number of things, probably not all right now, but maybe. How to adjust the steering, how to mount a tire, how to adjust the cranks, and the bottom bracket, the actual bearings that the crank goes through, how to check the derailleurs, and yeah, how to polish up a rim, assuming you're going to go with the steelies that they came with. And so we'll just kind of go through bit by bit, and hopefully this will be of value to you. We shall see. Alright, so this is the bike we're going to be working on. This is a 1975 Schwinn Continental, which I got out of somebody's field. There's no information about it. I just picked it up out of the grass, paid the man $20, and took it home with me. So I've already taken the wheels off, but just to give you a quick rundown of what this machine needs, well, I'll just get you a little closer here. So, the steering is okay. It's tight, but I'm going to take it apart to service it anyway. The brake pads are of unknown age, probably not in great shape. I don't care to find out. Because this is a Continental, it has better quality center pull brakes than like a Varsity. So I'm not going to touch the brakes as far as, trying to improve the calipers or anything like that. I will probably have to get into a big fight with this seat post to get it to adjust. I will also check out the derailleurs. The kickstand needs to be serviced. The kickstand is kind of wobbly. It will flop up and down without too much effort. The wheels I've already removed. I've already done some polishing on them. They need new rim tape. They also had completely shot rubber on them. Both the inner tubes and the tires were garbage. So those have already been removed and thrown away. But the first task I have today is to get the new tires installed, get the new rim tape on, and that way this thing will actually roll, and we can kind of take it from there. So before we get too far into this, I want to make it clear just kind of the premise of this. So I'm shooting in this filthy garage, in the dark, with poor equipment, not because I'm incapable of finding nicer cameras or cleaning up my garage first or anything like that. It's because I want it to be very clear that you do not need special equipment to work on these things. They're bicycles, they're not rocket ships. Therefore, you really only need very basic tools to work on them. You need some mechanical inclination, but you don't need much. And you don't need a particular space to work in them, to work on them in. You know, if it's winter and your significant other or others will let you work on the bike in the living room, it's fine. It's no big deal. We're working here because this is the state of my workspace right now as we speak. Just kind of run what you brung. The only tools you really need to fully service one of these bikes is an SAE wrench set, a metric wrench set, a large crescent wrench, a hammer, a big screwdriver, and a pair of pliers, and some tire levers. And that's it for the basic stuff. You know, you can get into like wheel truing, which is better to have a stand for, and a spoke wrench and that sort of thing. But right now we're really just talking about getting these things on the road, because that's what I'm trying to do with this one. I just want it to go, and stop, and steer, and stand up on its own. And once all those things are complete, my work here is kind of done. The rest of it's kind of small potatoes. If your goal is to ride the bike. If your goal is to make a bike, this video is not for you. I support doing that. I have done that. But this is just getting a cheap Schwinn, putting it on the road, riding the shit out of it, because that's what they were built for. Unlike modern department store bikes. So with that being said, let's take a look at just like going over real quick what to look for on a wheel, how some basic cleanup you can do on it, and how to mount a tire. So this is the front wheel. On most Chicago Schwinns, this is going to be just a regular nut, which you can take off with a crescent wrench or with a ratchet or wrench or whatever you got. This one, being a Continental, was kind of a fancier one. It has quick release lugs. I'm not totally sure I trust these, but I will see, and hopefully they won't fall off. They do have a pretty decent retention mechanism, but we'll see. So the main things you want to look for as you look over a wheel after you have the thing dismounted is you want to make sure that every single spoke is present and is not too loose. There are some loose ones on this, and some tight ones on this, but you want to make sure that none of them are broken, and you kind of start there. Again, this is just for getting it on the road. Because there's a bunch of rust on here and there on these spokes, I think the next time this has to be trued, I may replace the spokes, but we will see about that when it happens. The other thing is, once you have it unmounted, there's a rim tape in here that covers these brass spoke nipples. This stuff is just garbage. It's from 1975. It has perished. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick off all of this stuff and work my way around. And once I've got all this taken off, then I will install a new rim tape and go from there. As you work your way around, you want to make sure there's no cracks in the rim, make sure there's no cracks in the hub. I've already gone over this one and I know that it's good. And then for the actual surface of the rim, wherever it's rusty, especially along the braking surfaces, but also in here just for cosmetics, you can go through with a wad of aluminum foil and either some vinegar or some water and just kind of scrub your way around. This one has been scrubbed already. It wouldn't hurt to do it on the inside if there's any super rusty spots. I'm not going to bother with this. I just want to get it running. So then on the other one, I've also done the aluminum foil trick on this, which is why this is all shiny. I've gone over this as well as I can. There's a small dent in the rim here, and there's some rusty spots here and there within the rim. I've picked off the rim tape already, so this one is pretty much ready to go for the moment. And a rim tape is just a big rubber band, and all you have to do is line up this hole with the hole for the valve. So you can just start there, line it up, make sure it sits in nice and pretty like that, and just work your way around. Oops. Yeah, it's kind of a lot of that. Where was I? Okay, so now you got to make sure your hole is still lined up for the valve. I'm just going to pick this up, scoot it over a little bit, just like that. And I'm just going to go around once more, make sure it's all nice and tidy. Not too far off to one side or the other. For example, this is no good. And that's all looking fine. Then you take a tube. In this case, it's going to be a 20 to 28 by 622. Your local bike shop may or may not know what to get, but you can also read off the old inner tube. And the easiest way to do this is to put a little bit of air in this, using whatever means you have necessary or have with you, and then just enough to blow it up so that you can get it onto the rim and into the tire. So I'm going to bring you back for that. Okay, so we're back with some air. We got the tube, we got the tire. Now I happened to find when I was looking, this particular one, the larger models, the Varsity and the Continental, use these larger tires. If you have a Collegiate or one of their, I forget what all models they had, but some of their models use a tire that only one manufacturer still makes a tire for, so you're stuck with that. This one I happened to luck out, and a local bike store had this one. This is a Continental Ride Tour, which appears to be a pretty stout tire. One of the things that is useful to have is an actual wire bead on this. In other words, something that you can't fold up. And the reason for that is there's no lip on the inside of the rim as some rims have, or many rims have, and therefore if you inflate a tire too much that doesn't have a solid bead like this does, it'll kind of roll its way off the rim, which is not catastrophic, but it is startling. So what we'll do is I'm going to take the cap off here. I happen to have an air compressor, but you can use any form of air you can find. And I've have this set up very gently, just to inflate it about that much. And that will make it much easier to install. So I'm going to put the tube in so that the valve is opposite the label. It doesn't have to be, but that's what I'm going to do. And then you have to line up the valve with the hole. This particular tube, which is it just happens to be the one I got, has a retention screw on it. There's no particular need for them, but this one has it. So we'll slot the tube in here, kind of carefully work around. And the further around we get, the more it's going to fight. There we go. So the outside's mounted. Now we tuck in the tube. Your goal is just to make sure the tube doesn't get pinched as you put the tire the rest of the way on. So then you just kind of start working your way around again. This is where a tire lever can be helpful. So one of these, you can stick it in like this and just kind of pull it round. Or, more accurately, you can leave one installed and then pull your second one around. I don't know if you can see, but we've got two problems already. It's come off on the back side. And the tube is peeking out over here. So we'll try and take care of both things at once. And as you're doing it, as you're putting it together, you want to make sure that this is staying vertical, because if it gets cocked to one side, that means the tube is kind of pulling at it, and you can get a tear right there in the tube. So this stuff isn't really difficult. But it is kind of a pain in the ass. Here's that one. It's just this last little bit that's kind of hairy, as you can see. You can see here we've got a little bit of tube peeking out, which is not ideal. Okay. You can see how the back is snuck off again, and now we're cocked to the side a little bit. So hopefully as I roll this on, ow. Okay. Yeah, we're pretty much square on there. So since I got this thing, we'll just pull this on, and then we can inflate it a little bit. Nope, that's not cooperating. It's because I'm out of air. That's okay though. We'll get the other one mounted up and then go from there. Alright, so this one put up a big old fight, but it's on now. As I was putting this on, I noticed in tiny black letters on this black tire, somewhere around here, it said, "Mount only on hooked rims." This is not a hooked rim, this is a smooth rim. But these are the tires I got. So we will take a crack at that anyway. I think because it has this the wire bead around it, it's probably not going to be a big deal. But we'll find out together. I have this set up for 50 psi, so we'll just kind of gently nudge this toward inflation. I've already gone around. You can kind of pinch the tire in and make sure you don't have any inner tube peeking through, because if you pinch that as you inflate it, you will give yourself a flat before you ever get on the road. But we'll just kind of gently nudge this up toward 50 and see if it holds. Feels more like 30 or 40 to me, but we'll check. Not even that, 20. Give this a little bit more juice. That's feeling more like it. That's 45. I would normally start at about 50. The tire pressure, of course, is going to depend greatly upon your body weight and the weight of the vehicle and the weight of the other stuff you're carrying. But right now I'm just going around to make sure that it's seated relatively evenly, that there's no super low spots, no super high spots. And that is looking okay. I'm going to leave this at 45. We'll do the same with the other one. Like I said, I don't really care if the pressure is right now. I just want to make sure that that everything seats properly. So, just taking a peek, because I haven't done that on this one yet. I believe that the wheels like these that did not have a hook on the inner rim to catch the wire bead, I think they just did that for cost reasons. But you know, I'm going on the principle of lowest cost, get it on the road, be relatively safe. You know, it's, as I said, if a wheel starts to blow off of one of these, you'll know before you crash. That all looks good, so we'll do the same thing with this one. If you do happen to have a compressor, which I would not expect you to, but if you have one, you can certainly use it. Don't turn it all the way up, because there's not a whole lot of air volume in these. So it could get pretty exciting pretty quickly. Again, just filling it up some, looking around the edge. Take your time. Just make sure it's pretty even. You would not need to run more than about 60 psi in one of these anyway. I normally run mine about 50, 55, about 200 pounds. The bike's about 40. And that's 45 as well. These appear to have directional tread on them. It doesn't matter. You're only going 10 miles an hour. So, now I'm going to grab the frame and we'll put the front wheel on. Zoop. I don't know if this is all going to be in shot. Sometimes you have to back off the brakes in order to get the wheel on and off. I don't think that will be the case this time. On models like this that have this goofy quick release, There's 3 parts to it. You have the actual wing nut. You have this shaped washer. This actually drops into the hole on the fork. And then this washer goes on the other side. And that goes on top. Or perhaps the washer goes in here and this one goes on the outside. I forget. We'll try it one way and see if it works. Now, looking at the witness marks, I believe these go on the inside. No, I lied. I think they go on the outside. Oh. So it goes this funky retainer in first. That's what locates the axle in the fork. Then your washer. Then your wing nut. Normally you would just loosen these instead of removing them. Okay. That's the front wheel. The back wheel we'll do in a minute. I'm going to see if I can show you. If you watch how this is running, let's see if this will refocus. I forget. Nope. But if you watch it running, you'll see whether it's true or not. And this one is not great. But that's what we're going to run for right now. And we'll be back in a minute for the rear. Okay, so here we are at the rear. I've put the bike upside down. This is not a great position because it folds the brake cables right at these levers. Not ideal, but I can't think of another way to do this that is not going to like really suck to try and film and do it at the same time. While we've got this up here, just check and make sure the freewheel is freewheeling and also stops freewheeling when you turn it the other way. Make sure that you've got teeth all the way around, that they're not too worn and sharp. These are okay, fairly lightly used. Then you have a nut and a washer either side. And the nut goes on the outside, and what you do is crank this guy back like so, so that you can get the chain over it, and then slot it back. This dropout is much deeper than this dropout. This frame was used for both 3-speed models that had an internal hub and no derailleur, and for the derailleur models. So this side of the wheel is just not going to go back all the way. And then once you have it on, 15 mil wrench, you can tighten it up. 15 mil incidentally because this assembly was made in France. So I'll pick this up. Just kind of drape it over whichever way it'll go. Crank this back. Oop, I got that upside down. Come on now. There we go. The chain fell off the back, so we're a little funky there. So now, just kind of caress this thing into place. Just like that. Now you can tighten this side up first because this is where it's going to be. It's held in place by this bracket for the derailleur. So snug that down. Then you can give the wheel a spin and see how centered you are. And that looks basically good. So we'll snug down the back side. The best side snug down. And tighten that up. Alright. Now I'm going to flip it on the on its wheels and crank it down a little bit tighter, and then we will address the brakes, which is the other thing that's standing between us and writing this thing today. Okay, now we need to address the brakes. There's no part of this bike that is made of rubber that should not be replaced. It is almost 50 years old. And this old rubber ends up just being like an old pencil eraser. It doesn't stop any better than an old pencil eraser erases. You can get new pads. They don't have to be specific to the type of caliper it is. Any sort of rim brake pad will work if it is like one of these. So this is threaded. The post is threaded just like the posts on these are. And how they work is there's a sort of a washer that can bounce around in here, and a matching one on the outside, a cone and a cup, and a second washer. So this part goes on the inside, and these parts go on the outside. Now, they go, if there's a wear line indicator like this one has, you probably can't see it on camera, then that side goes up. The short side goes toward the front of the bike, the long side goes toward the back, so they'll go in like this. And first we got to take the old ones off. They use a 10mm. You can see, first off, these are almost worn out. The grooves between the pads are almost gone. But this is hard and slick. There's like nothing grabby about this pad. It will barely stop. I've not even ridden this bike. I know it will not stop with these pads. You may find that you have to back off the slack adjuster like this. That will open up the pads. This particular model has a quick release. Not totally sure how that works. I will figure it out later. Most of my Schwinns have not been nearly this fancy. So these come as a set. So they're going to go in like this. So we'll start with this one on the outside because you'll be able to see it better. I'll tuck in right here. Oh, that is much bigger, so we'll have to actually back off that that pad a whole bunch. And if you get this confused in your hands, you've got the cone part here, the cup part here, the washer, and the nut. Oh, cute. I guess. Well, we'll figure that out later. Oh, I see. This just lets it back off further. Okay. Do the same with this side. Now, what I will have to do is adjust this brake cable here. I'll have to loosen that up a little bit so that there's enough slack, because these pads are a lot beefier than the other ones are. But what I want to show you right now is you want these to be adjusted so they're up a little ways, like that. I can also see that I don't have the wheel on quite straight because there's not a whole lot of clearance on this side, but there's more on this side. And it's okay to have the rim or the pad snug down on the rim right now. And what you want to do is get them adjusted so that no part of the pad is going to touch the rubber on the tire. And you want the back of the pad to be out just a hair's breadth. You can put a business card along the back of it. And then just leave the brakes tightened down like this, and then crank them down with a, it looks like a 5mm hex key. And just crank those down after they're in adjustment. Then you can back off the slack. And when you've backed it off, you want there to be just enough space for the wheel to go all the way around without rubbing, but as close as you can possibly get it otherwise, like a millimeter would be fine. Your goal is to preferably not be able to pull the lever all the way back to the bars. That way you know you're getting your maximum stopping power. It's probably not going to be possible on this one because the wheels aren't very true, but we'll just get it as good as we can. So I'm going to slack this off and get a card, adjust the wheels so it's a little bit better in line, and we'll bring you back. Alright, so I'm back. To loosen this cable to give it more slack, you have to loosen this nut, and there's a matching hex on the back. This is 9mm. I had no luck coming up with. I barely found one 9mm, let alone two. So we're going to use a crescent for the back. Like so. The way this works, you probably can't see it, but there's just a hole drilled through the back of this bolt, which allows the wire to slide in and out. It's already just by right of me having messed with it, backed off, and it's backed off a whole bunch. That's actually about where I want it. I also really need to address that kickstand. When you put it back in, try and make it so the wire is vertical, because this span here is kind of the critical span. So you don't want to be wasting your brake effort trying to pull the cable vertical. It should already be vertical, and then you can go from there. So I'm going to put it about here. It really helps to have three hands. If you have someone who can help you pull the cable reasonably taut, that's a great start. If you don't, you can at least start snugging it down here, and then as the bolt in the back begins to turn, then you can put your wrench on the back and straighten it out like so. You know what? I think I'm going to do it this way. No, I'm not going to do it that way. Just daydreaming. And it's okay for this to be tight. It is your brakes after all. That's actually still looser than I want it to be. The idea is for it to at least be a little bit slack when you first tighten it down here, and that will give you some range with the quick release up here and also with this adjustment barrel to tighten it up further. Alright, so what do we got? In this case, I've got just a faint bit of rub in the front because the because this thing. Anyway, the wheel's not quite true, so we're not really going to be able to tighten it up as much as it should be. Ideally, and probably in the future, I'll pull this brake apart and make sure it's cleaned and lubricated. But for right now, I just want to make sure we get a decent amount of stopping force, just enough to take it out for a ride. And we'll adjust the actual position a little bit better later. This is about as slacked off as I'm comfortable with it being. I would much prefer it to be tighter still, but that's what we're going to run for right now. I'm going to take this for a spin, do the front brake first. That's the important one. If your front brake is adjusted properly, it will be as much stopping as you can possibly do in the dry. With a good set of tires, a good set of pads, clean rims, straight rims, you should be able to yank on that pedal and do a stoppie. If you can't lift the back wheel, that brake's not strong enough, in my opinion. And therefore the back brake is sort of an emergency brake, at least the way I ride. So yeah, this is about ready to go. I'm going to take it for a spin, probably set the tire pressure again to something a little bit higher, and then I will probably decide what I want to do about the position of the wheel left to right. I'm not sure if the dish is correct on this wheel. Again, we're fresh out of the field and ready to go for a first ride, at least a shakedown ride. I can already tell We're going to need front brake cables. This housing is busted up here, which is no good. Brake cables are cheap. They're pretty easy to do, and we will address that when I get some. But for right now, I'm going to go take it for a spin. Something I neglected to mention, these cup and cone things, there's a thick one and a thin one. So you can actually switch them around if you need. If you think you can get by with just doing that as opposed to adjusting the cable. I'm going to do that here, just to be lazy. I'll probably still have to play with it, but that's how it is. These new pads, the cup and cone system and all that stuff, is actually a significant improvement on the pads that came before, which just had a fixed angle. This allows the entire pad to pivot to grab the brake or grab the rim much more effectively. And as a result, having just taken this for a spin with the new front brake, I can tell you with certainty that it is well, this brake with the old pads barely even slowed the bike down, much less stopped it. Oop, I did that backwards. Or did I? Even though this brake had just barely slowed the vehicle down at all, the front brake, just with new pads, even with them being rather out of adjustment because of the rim situation, they stop vastly better, like wildly better. It's really remarkable. So I may do it half and half on this, just because the geometry is kind of weird on this caliper, or the other possibility is that the wheel's not quite straight. But I'm not too worried about that right now. I'm just going to finish this up and go have some dinner, I think. Next step is definitely going to be to take off the kickstand and service it, because this has a tendency to really want to fall down like a whole bunch. But they're permanently affixed on Schwinn's, Chicago Schwinn's anyway, and they're actually a very stout kickstand and very simple to service, and just pretty much bulletproof, just like the rest of the bike. So I'm going to finish this up, and I guess the next time I see you, we'll be doing the kickstand. Alright, I lied. I was all pumped by the fact that the brakes actually work pretty well, so I thought I'd take a crack at this. Other people have done videos on this, but as long as I'm doing a comprehensive sort of deal. The way that these kickstands are held in is there's a collar here, and there's a ridge on the inside of that collar that hooks into this pin. And the way that you take the whole thing out is you just slide a wrench over so you can push down on this collar, and then you pull out the pin with a pair of pliers, and then the whole thing comes out. I suspect because this one has very little in the way of detents over here, I think, well, I'm not sure what's going on with it. I just know that I'm irritated by it. So we're going to take it apart and see what the deal is. So you can just put a wrench down here, and if you cock it over, it pushes, and then that pin comes out. And that's all it's got. So this has detents in here that made up with this roll pin here, and all I'm going to do is probably spray this off with brake cleaner and re-grease it and get in there and clean out the detents. And that's pretty much all of the servicing that is required or possible with these. And installation is exactly the reverse of removal. You put it back down in there, you push this down, pop the pin back in, and that's it. So I'm going to take care of that, or at least take a look at it, and that's going to be it for tonight. This is that vinegar and aluminum foil trick. Just spray this stuff down, this rusty piece. Crunch up some aluminum foil. And it's all shiny again. Also, the detents were definitely plugged up on that. I just poked the grease out with the screwdriver, so this is ready to go back together. So, here is the kickstand. You want to grease here, here, and plenty of any old like STP grease is fine. You don't have to be shy about it. Nobody's gonna see.